everyone! This is Superhero Rewind, and I'm Captain Logan. This is a new video review series I'm doing where I'll be taking a look at superhero DVDs and putting them in historical context. Instead of a first impression right after a movie comes out, I'll instead be looking at movies that have been out for a while, some that have been out for a very long time, and analyzing them now that they've had time to impact the culture. Which movies were hits, which ones were misses, which ones do we still remember, which ones don't we remember, which ones should we remember but we don't, and why. Vince and I do written reviews of new films, and we discuss them on Geek Speak the podcast, so for new movies, check out both our blog and our podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about a direct-to-video movie called Superman Doomsday, which is loosely based on the Death of Superman arc from the early 90s. Superman died in Superman number 75, and then this arc continued in Funeral for a Friend and Reign of the Superman, and these all span the four regular Superman monthly titles in the early 90s, 92 to 93. In the mid-90s, this was almost turned into a live-action film, which would have been directed by Tim Burton, called Superman Lives, and for a whole lot of different reasons, that never happened. And so Superman Doomsday is the closest to this that we have and probably will ever have on film. Of course, if you know your Superman history, you know that when Superman died, there were these four Supermen that took Superman's place. Some of them pretended to actually be Superman, and some of them were just trying to fill his shoes. And that was my favorite part of that comic arc, and I was looking forward to seeing that on screen when I first heard about this Bruce Timm movie, Superman Doomsday. So this is the first DC Universe animated original movie done by Bruce Timm and his team. Bruce Timm's the guy who did the stellar Batman the Animated Series, and then the Superman series, Justice League, and everything in that continuity in what we call the DC Animated Universe. Superman Doomsday is not within that universe. It's a standalone movie based on, like I said, this comic arc. And so each of these movies in this series are based on a graphic novel or an arc in comics. The basic plot of the movie, this came out a few years back, is that Lex Luthor's scientists unearthed Doomsday from underground. He was apparently put there by an alien race because they couldn't kill him. He and Superman fight in Metropolis, and Superman finally kills him, but the fight also kills Superman. Everybody mourns, there's a funeral, and then Superman, air quotes, comes back from the grave to stop Toyman from killing a bunch of kids. But when Clark doesn't return to work, Lois gets suspicious, and then it's revealed that Lex actually clones Superman because Lex is so twisted he couldn't accept that something else killed Superman. So Superman is apparently still dead, but his clone is there protecting the city. He has Superman's powers, but he just has memories programmed by Lex. It turns out this clone is defective because he starts killing criminals and enacting his own martial law on Metropolis. The real Superman finally returns from the air quotes, dead, to stop him. He uses a kryptonite gun made by robots in his Fortress of Solitude. Everyone quickly forgets about scary Superman, and then they go back to loving good, perfect, can do no wrong Superman. So this clone of Superman is basically the four Supermen from the Reign of the Supermen all rolled into one. He's kind of like Eradicator, but I miss Steel, Superboy, and Cyborg, which are not represented really in any way at all. All of those characters were interesting, three-dimensional characters, and this really was their story in the comics, not Lex's, like it is in the movie, although Lex was certainly involved in the comics. But the Superman clone isn't really a character so much as he is a failed science experiment, so there's not as interesting character stuff as there is in the comics. This movie is really too short. It's only 75 minutes long. The Doomsday fight, I think, is long enough, but if some of the added subplots that weren't in the comics had been left out, like Lois knowing Superman's Clark Kent, but he won't tell her anyway, and Jimmy Olsen has this bad attitude once Superman's gone, this is all stuff they added, and it takes away from the story from the comics, because there would have been plenty of room if that stuff had been left out, and if there had been another maybe 25 or 30 minutes in the movie to develop the four Supermen and tell that story. This movie is certainly not epic enough. The Justice League is left out entirely, and Superman doesn't really die. In the comics, it was a real death, and it was a real resurrection, despite, yes, being filled with plot devices and stretches in logic. But here, Superman puts himself in some sort of Kryptonian stasis, and then he just wakes up later. The real Superman in this movie is also too destructive. In the comics, he fought Doomsday outside of Metropolis in remote areas, trying to keep him out of the city. He ultimately failed, and that's why the fight ended up in Metropolis. But in this movie, Superman flies him out of the atmosphere, and then brings him back through, pounding him into the heart of Metropolis. In the comics, they both just hit each other at the same time, and then they both died, which probably would be hokey on screen in a way that it wasn't in the comics. What I wonder is, why doesn't Superman take him somewhere more remote? Why does he have to plunge him into the heart of Metropolis, where there's a bunch of, people? Why can't he plunge him into the moon, or Mars, or a desert that doesn't have any people around? This movie also is trying way too hard to have a PG-13 rating. This movie has some weird lines of out-of-place dialogue that make it seem like they were trying really hard to get that rating instead of really needing that rating to tell the story. I'm going to score this a 2 out of 4. This is a good standalone Superman story, assuming you're not expecting something closer to the original, and it's a good springboard for the DC animated films that follow it, most of which are improvements over it. It's definitely worth watching for celebrity voice cast. Adam Baldwin does Superman, and James Marsters does a really creepy Lex Luthor. This movie won't be remembered like Superman's unprecedented death in the comics is now and probably will be for a long time, but the DVD also has a really great featurette on the history of Superman's death in the comics, so it's certainly also worth picking up for that. Thanks a lot for listening, and we'll see you again on Superhero Rewind.